Let's switch gears a little bit and turn our focus to digital transformation and, of course, workforce. I think workforce issue has permeated a lot of our discussion here, particularly when you talk about expertise and the lack thereof sometimes. So it's important that, like the federal counterparts, state and local government managers are facing digital skills gap. And consequently, there's an increasing need to hire and train and retain employees. And well, you talk to any state, and the solutions are to go automation, to outsource, to all these different methods that they think can alleviate these issues. How are you dealing with that the fact that it's affecting digital transformation efforts across the board? How is it working out for you in Maryland? Katie?
So I'm really passionate about this space. I'm coming from running a digital services team at DoD. What I've seen in Maryland so far, being somewhat new in the role, we manage a lot of contracts, on behalf of the agencies, and we don't have the in-house expertise always to sort of guide those projects. So when states or federal agencies say we want digital transformation, the thought, I think they jump very quickly to those legacy systems and what it takes to upgrade them. Whereas I think it's actually more of a cultural change, that we want to bring product managers, UX, UI people, data scientists, engineers in-house such that they can make quicker assessments. So for example, to pick on cybersecurity and the ATO process. We jump really quickly to, this is a framework, in this framework that we must follow to the letter. So let's go to a company who will have us sort of guide us through that process. Whereas, true transformation in-house might mean, do we have security engineers and architects on our team in a way that they can, again, with a shift to some of these SaaS products, they have native security. You don't necessarily need to take them through this long ATO process when we need, coming from DoD again, to get things out in the field really quickly. So I think we want to be thinking of how we can bring that expertise in-house, not necessarily as implementers, but so that they can more quickly provide guidance and expertise to agencies that are trying to make progress.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I would add, so people are policy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, your people are your greatest assets in any organization, and we're geographically located in a part of the country with wonderful education institutions. So we try to create opportunities for our workforce based on what they want to do, right? So if you don't want to learn something, we send you to an executive education program at Harvard, you're probably not going to get a lot out of it, right? So I always ask everybody, where do your interests lie? I mean, technology and security is a broad ocean, right? So tell me what you want to learn, and I'm sure there's a program out there that we can support. That's been a great method. We've got people getting advanced certifications from different accreditation bodies. We have folks going to executive education programs in Massachusetts and beyond. So that's how we're trying to focus on, like Katie mentioned, we need to have a skill set in-house to manage outside providers that are coming in, whether they're management consultants, software publishers, implementation teams, integrators. We still have to have a workforce that understands what all those concepts mean. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can do that in today's rapidly evolving society and technology is to continue to invest in the people that are there. Mm-hmm. So it's people or policy. What are you going to do? Digital transformation. Okay, that sounds great. It's a broad topic, but how are you going to do it? And the how means you have to invest in the people. Yeah. So that's what we do.
The whole digital transformation thing. It just it reminds me of my experience in California when I carried this around. It's coffee stained and dog-eared, but back when I was CIO in California, I got a call from an old friend back east. I actually grew up in DC. And a friend of ours, a young lady, was getting married, and her fiance was from California, and he was divorced when he was like 18. So they've been trying to get a copy of the divorce record. No luck. Calls not answered if it just rings and rings. So I said, well, you called the right guy. I'll find this. So I made a couple calls and got around to found the Office of Vital Statistics in California, and sure enough, they did it. So I said, well, let me go to their website and just check it out a little bit. So I went on the website and I noticed that nothing you could do online, but you could print out a form and fill it out. I said, well, let me read this over before I send this to them. Due to budgetary constraints, our processing for marriage records for those years can take up to 2 to 3 years. Now, poor Katie was getting married, wanted that tomorrow. So she was so upset when she heard about that, and I said, there's got to be something you guys can do, but I can't help you here in California, it looks like. So I've always looked at that and said, nowadays with digital transportation, it sounds like everybody's lining up to become, the next organization that's going to be digitized, if you will. But I went back to the Office of Vital Statistics yesterday, and now it doesn't take 2 or 3 years. It takes 4 or 5 months. So there's been some progress made, but I always said there's probably 20 vendors within 10 square miles of Sacramento that'll do this for nothing and just take $10 from the person who wants it. So I think a lot of these offices of innovation have such a rich target environment. You think they'd be a little more up to date on some of these issues that they're facing.
I think part of the problem is we create our own we worsen the backlog. I saw this in particular at DoD. We spend so much time looking at the records and trying to digitize the paper files that we forget to stop the bleeding. So if you're applying for a marriage license now in the state of California, let's focus on no more couples have to go through this. They should apply online. If it's still a paper, if it's still a paper-based system, we're continuing to add to the backlog. And I think there's been so many times in my career where whether it's been state or local or at the federal level, where the problem as it's proposed to me is we need you to look through digitize the backlog. Add. I saw this when we were withdrawing from Afghanistan. Find everybody that ever worked for us in Afghanistan and digitize their records. That will take years. Let's actually focus on the people who are applying for asylum status is the relevant population. Let's focus on them, and getting their records so that they can properly get visas. So part of the problem is we forget to address both ends of the equation. There's the backlog that we need to digitize, past records, but let's also stem the bleeding and create sort of these systems up front so that no more couples or refugees have to go through this.
Well, one of the things that I recognize in going through this issue with organizations and companies that are trying to help organizations do the whole digital services thing and really bring it up to date is the lack of proper leadership for these kind of challenges. Because, it was like even during year 2000 mitigation efforts, some of these agencies couldn't care less if something went wrong. They're on Christmas vacation, But the states and agencies that had significant executive support for what they were trying to do got things done. And that's such a difficult thing to train people to do. It's that cultural change we talked about at the beginning.
It's executive, I don't know if you move on, but it's executive support, but we also sometimes focus on the lower levels of technical talent. You say, if only we had 10 developers, we could get this done. And those developers are critical, but it's also that middle layer of management. Those developers will come in, and if they're coming in for government, they're already taking a pay cut. But to add a boss who doesn't know how to direct them because they don't have the technical expertise is really frustrating, and then you lose them. So part of talent attraction and retention is not just having senior level buy-in, but to have the middle layer of management who can properly tell them what to do.
It's very true. It's not the chicken and the egg, really, in many cases. Well, we're almost out of time, so I want to pose the last question to everyone. As you know, in last fall, we had 36 gubernatorial elections around the country. And there were 8 incumbents who didn't seek re-election. And we've just had a mid-year NASCIO conference with probably again 1,000 employees. One of the things that happens every time there's a major election like there was this year, there's a big turnover in state CIOs. In fact, our two states actually have new CIOs as a result of electoral changes. So you got approved pretty quick, but a lot of times it can take 6 months, 12 months to get a CIO in place. But so over this next year, we're going to see probably 20, 30 new faces and CIOs and probably CISOs too. The CISO job has gotten so important, it's now a political appointee. So what are we telling these, what advice do you give the new people that come on board? Well, in fact, I'll start with you, since you came on board, and you probably got some good advice and some poor advice, but tell us a little bit of the positive stuff. We don't want to hear negative stuff today.
Well, I think, we're here at NASCIO, and I think that's an incredible resource for state CIOs to connect with one another. And if one states are obviously very different populations, different services that they're trying to provide, but there's no need to always reinvent the wheel. If it's been done in another state, there's perhaps a resource, or everybody wants like an eGov platform. Do we all need to build it ourselves? Probably not. So I think taking advantage of some of the work that's been done is certainly one piece of it. The other thing I would add as good advice that I've gotten so far, in addition to tapping into the CIO community, is to think about where, what do you want to get done? There's any number of areas that you could focus on as CIO, and to be really deliberate coming in about where you want to spend your time. Is it around lifting to moving to the cloud? Is it around digital transformation? Is it around cybersecurity, and being really thoughtful about priorities?
Okay. Well, you've been here longer than a couple months, but tell us about what your advice would be.
I think continuity of government is something that we stress in Massachusetts. Our cabinet secretary and CIO, Jason Snyder, this is actually his second tour of duty. About 10 years ago, he had left after about a 7 or 8 year stint in executive branch of state government in Massachusetts. So he came back, and it's amazing. We were talking last night at dinner, and he said, I see so many people here that I worked with over 10 years ago, and it's great. And so I think that's the culture that he's created. Let's try to enhance what we're doing well, and how can we improve it. Let's figure out maybe where the low-hanging fruit is, and target that as an opportunity to grow. But he is very driven to grow our talent base, and believes in continuity of government. I would probably say it's a great model that other states that are going through maybe some changes in leadership could probably take a few lessons from.
Okay. James, why don't you pitch in?
So what I find myself and some of my teammates doing is really talking to these leaders about evaluating the incentive structures that are in place, particularly for things like acquisition, looking at broader long-term trends, things like demographics, because what we're seeing is, with the decreased enrollment in things like colleges, a lot of people are, a lot more private, smaller companies being put in place. If you show me your incentives, I can tell you the outcome, right? Someone said that. So if they can help the transformation process begin by looking at the incentives that are in place, and also looking at the broader technical debt, as we would call it, right? And that backlog of tasks that have to be done, taking a considered approach, exactly as Katie mentioned. And for goodness sake, don't forget the cultural aspect. I love what Anthony has talked about, giving people the opportunity, the power, the enablement to make the choices themselves, because that's the only way the transformation happens.
Okay. Brian, why don't you bring us home?
Yeah, I'll pick it up on, I'll take it down the cultural path for a second. So I think for incoming elected candidates, the way I would take this and getting it back to zero trust, getting it back to the IT discussion, you can't fix what you can't see. If you don't understand what's happening in the world of state or local government IT, then I think you've got to start asking the questions about how can I get an improved understanding of our current state? Because as much as we talk about transformation, digital transformation, migration to the cloud, that's probably not step one. Step one is understanding where am I at today? And so I'll plug what we do at Datadog just for a second, but we are, the world we live in is we're building IT systems that are getting more complex at an accelerating rate. A new elected leader probably has the least understanding of what's happening in that environment, but they've got the most power to break down the silos to get there. There are plenty of technologies, and Datadog is one of them, that market-leading capabilities for helping me see in a single pane of glass my network, my infrastructure, my apps, my logs, and security. We're still doing all that in a very siloed context. If I'm a new executive branch administrator, I am trying to break those silos down and more quickly get myself into a state of readiness to harness innovation the way I need to if I want to deliver citizen services and citizen experience as one of the primary parts of my candidacy.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. I want to thank you all. This has been a great discussion today. We really appreciate all of your insights and on the pressing issues facing your organizations. So thank you, Tony, thank you, Katie, thank you, Brian, and thank you, James.